Namaste. Hey, this is Robert Allen with SacredSupplements.com, and this is going to be Ormus Frequently Asked Questions Part 3. Now, Parts 1 and 2 were about the consumption of Ormus, whereas this one is going to be about the production of Ormus. And if you missed Parts 1 and 2, there'll be a link at the end of the video. And I don't know about you, but I've grown tired of looking at me, so I decided to do a commentary type version for this video. And I sorted through 100 plus emails looking for the most commonly asked questions about making Ormus, as well as a few good questions that I thought I would add to the top 12. And as always, I'm going to try to keep this simple and straight to the point, so let's get right on it. The one I use is the HI, that's Hannah Instruments 98127, and I can knock out a whole lot of these other questions like where do I get the salt, what else do I need, where do I get storage fluid, where do I get the jars and all that stuff. If you go to SacredSupplements.com on any page, home page or other, and scroll to the bottom left corner, there's a section of links under the title Suppliers, and you just click on that and it'll take you straight to the product, so you know the exact one you want, and if you want to buy it elsewhere, at least you know what you're looking for. Alright, so that's the pH meter I get, and the main reason, I've got several pH meters, but the main thing you want to look for, you want one with temperature control. In other words, it adjusts to the temperature automatically, and you want something that's waterproof, and you want something that's fairly reliable. And this one's for the money. You get really good accuracy, it's going to last you a long time, and it's fairly easy to use, and I'm really happy with that one. I've got a more expensive one, but I actually rely more on the HI 98127 model. So when we're adding the lye, you'll notice that it reaches a certain point and then kind of sticks, like at 9.5, or it could be anywhere around the 8 to 10 range, depending on the pH of your water and how much salt you're using and whatnot. But it will buffer somewhere, it will stick, and then you keep adding lye and you think nothing's going to happen, and then suddenly it jumps way up to 11 or 12 or something, way past your 10.78 that you're shooting for. Okay, so the question was, why does this happen? Well, we're reaching a point, an alchemical point of reactivation or revivification. And there's something special that happens right around the between 10.6 and 10.78, where things transform into monoatomic elements into a high spin state, and it's a sweet spot. And typically your pH is going to want to stay below it or go way past it, because it's real tricky to get it to go there. So when you get up to that point, you need to keep stirring and adding drop by drop, slowly, because it literally comes down to a matter of drops at the end. So just go slow. It's going to jump. Know it's going to jump, and take your time. This is alchemical process, so we should never do it when we're rushed or in a hurry of any way. Just take our time, methodically with a rhythm. Just get a drip, 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 and keep a close eye. And make sure you always have a visible vortex on the top of the water when you're adding the lye. The water will spin long after the vortex goes away. So keep an eye on the top of that water. Make sure you always have a visible vortex while you're adding. Add drop by drop. Forget about the clock. Just take your time. Move slowly. Keep your eye on that pH meter. And when you get it, make sure you got it. Give it another good full spin, get a full speed vortex going, and make sure your pH meter holds steady at 10.7, because a lot of times you'll get a false reading because it's not at a full spin, and when you give it a full spin it'll drop back down to 10.5 or 4 or something. So just continue that process, take your time, and the only time you're getting an accurate reading with your pH meter is when that water is in a full speed vortex. Okay, if during a high-speed vortex reading you have over 10.7, you have failed. Dump and try again. Now, sometimes if it's like 10.8 or 10.9, sometimes I will go ahead and rinse it out and use it on plants. But as far as human consumption goes, you've failed, dump it out, try again. Okay, this could be one of three things. The most common thing is using more than 1 cup of salt. So if you're using 2 cups of salt, you're obviously going to need more lye to raise the pH. So you're going to need more room in your jar. So don't fill it 3/4 of the way full. Just fill it a little over half, and that should leave you enough room to add enough lye to the 10.78. Now if you're using 1 cup, 3/4 of the gallon of water will work perfect for you. And another thing that could be the problem is to test the pH of your sodium hydroxide. It should be 14, and if it's less than 14, it's going to take a lot more of it. It might not even be strong enough to make the 10.78 swing. So one of those 3 things should put a stop to that. Okay, to get the large flakes, what you need to do is mix up your lye plenty of time in advance and let it cool to approximately, room temperature, about the same as your water. So you want your water and your lye to be the same temperature. And the key to getting the big flakes is adding drop by drop by drop to a high spin vortex. And that'll spread that little drop out into a flake as it hits. But it has to dribble, it has to just drop, 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 drop. And I know that takes a lot longer than just pouring it in there. But that is the key to getting the large flakes and to get a larger return on your precipitate at the end. Okay, that's from not doing what I just talked about doing. Either your lye is too hot and the water's too cold and you're adding it too fast, or the water's not spinning fast enough. So it's kind of a 3-part thing. You got to get the lye cooled down, get the water spinning fast, and add it drop by drop to keep from getting big globs or chunks in your Ormus. Yes, you can, but you want to make sure you use the final rinse water. The first few rinses are going to be too salty. You definitely don't want to give that to plants or animals. But the final rinse water is good. It has orms in it, and it's very good for your plants and stuff. But if you're using 2 cups of salt, you need to rinse a few more times. Usually I rinse 5 times if I'm doing 2 cups of salt. So the final rinse water is good. The water when you think you're all done making your Ormus, that water you drain off the top, that is good for plants and animals. Okay, when you're all done and you've drained off that final rinse water and you got all that precipitate at the bottom of the jar, what I like to do is let it sit for another day or 2. Just cover it up, keep it dark, let it sit for another day or 2, and then you'll notice that it separates and there's even more water on top. I drain that off, and then we need to get that into a more manageable size bottle. So what I do is I pour it into a glass cup, then I use a syringe to draw the Ormus out and squirt it into a glass bottle. Now you can use plastic or whatever type of bottle you prefer, and then wrap that bottle in aluminum foil, and I also stick mine inside a metal container, but at least wrap it in foil, and then just use as directed, 1 to 2 teaspoons mixed with 8 ounces of water once per day. Well, I've tried using baking soda and it's not strong enough to make the pH swing to 10.7. So, you could try it maybe with very, very tiny amounts of salt. You could maybe do it with baking soda, but it's not strong enough to make the swing. That's why we use the sodium hydroxide. My short answer is no, because we want a nice clean base to start with. So, I don't know how good a purifier you have, but if it contains any fluoride or chlorine or any type of man-made chemical in it, that's not a good basis for making Ormus. Well, yeah, you can, but I'd be very careful about which ones I choose. Traditionally we want to use either Dead Sea salt or Himalayan salt, and for more reasons than just the mineral content. But technically you can extract Ormus from anything, so you can use whatever kind of salt you want, but I would make sure it's a completely all natural, no additive salt. Well, if you make it correctly, it really is alchemy. Alchemy is combining the spiritual with the chemical. Now, if you're just going at it like you're baking cookies and, dumping this and that in there and stirring it around and stuff, you're basically just going to make a big pot of really rich minerals and trace minerals. So if done properly, it is an alchemical experience. And perhaps this is my fault because I simplified the tutorial, whereas if I'd used the alchemical terminology and stuff, it probably would have scared off some other people, and I wanted to keep this simple. And I'm really proud of all you guys that are making this Ormus and have learned how to make it. You tested it, you got the results you liked, learned how to make it yourself, and prayerfully you've taught some other people how to do it. So I just want to say real quickly, I'm real proud of you. Probably everyone who's watching this has made Ormus, and I'm super proud of you guys. And just for the benefit of you guys listening, I'll go through kind of the stages of making Ormus and include the alchemical terminology, just to, make it a little more rich experience for you next time you go to make Ormus. And I should probably preface this by saying, I'm not an alchemical expert. I'm basically self-taught. I do have a mentor, but basically I learned everything just from reading and watching videos and whatnot. So some of these words I've never even heard pronounced. So if I mispronounce a word, I apologize. But based on my limited understanding, this is the basic process we're going through when we make Ormus. So first is the composition, the joining together of two different substances. And that's, of course, when we're adding the salt to the water. Liquefaction, that is the dissolving of the salt, the turning of a solid material into a liquid either by melting or dissolving. And then the concoction, that's when we add the lye, the cooking or heating of a mixture of substances at a moderate heat for an extended period. And then when we just slowly keep adding the lye, this is the imbibition, the feeding of a process by the gradual and continual addition of some substance. And then revivification, this is the raising of the pH to that, that precious 10.7 threshold point. And revivification means the bringing of a mortified matter back to life or reactivating it. And then albification, that's when we're adjusting the pH. The making of the matter in the alchemical work becomes white. And I've noticed that when you reach a certain point, I can almost, make a whole batch of Ormus without using a pH meter until the very last minute, because it turns this brilliant bright white when it reaches that perfect pH. And then division, that's when it's the Ormus is settling after you get done and, when you cover it up for 3 days, the separation of a substance into its elements. That's called division, which is done through the process called dissension. And that's why we wait 3 days. Dissension is when the subtle or active part of a substance is made to go down to the bottom of the vessel. And that's why we wait 3 days to get a full dissension. Because if you do it too soon, a lot of people make Ormus and they look the next day and like, oh gosh, look how much Ormus I have. Well, it's not done with dissension. That's why we wait 3 days. And this process could also be considered precipitation, the descent of a substance out of a solution. The precipitate descends to the bottom of our jar, and that's why we call it the precipitate. All right, and then the draining is ablation, and that's the separation of a component by removing the upper part, sometimes by skimming or siphoning it off the surface, or by wicking it up using a feather or a cloth. And then after we've done that, of course, we add more water, again, the rinsing, which is called edulcoration, the washing of a salty substance till all the salts are removed. That's how we can tell, or an easy way to check to see if we're done rinsing is make sure it's not salty. So the rinsing is adulcoration. And then ablution, that's the rinse and repeat. That's when we just keep doing it, the purification of a substance by successive washings with a liquid. So that's, we just keep rinsing it and rinsing it. That's called ablution. And then the next step is what I consider gradation. Now, gradation means the gradual purification of a substance, often through a series of stages. So at each stage of rinsing and anytime I handle the Ormus, I always try to stay in a state of prayer or chanting or blessing. So I consider that the gradation. And then there's also exaltation, which what I consider my charging with energy and using sound and intentions. But exaltation means an operation by which a substance is raised into a purer and more perfect nature. We do the chemical part right to get all the minerals and everything, but it's the gradation and exaltation that really boosts it into what's called the quinta essentia, the making of a quintessence or highly elevated form of a substance. And basically, when it's all said and done, that's what we've done. We've done elixiration, the conversion of a substance into an elixir. And it's a really fun process, and it takes time to get it down right. But if you do it in the right state of mind and everything, people are saying, what's your secret? Why does your Ormus work better? I think it has to do with the charging, and it would take me a long time to explain how I charge my elixirs and everything. But I will give you a few tips when it comes to charging. And the main thing is, just imagine that it's something that's been dead for millions of years coming back to life. It wouldn't want to come into a harsh environment with bright sunlight and loud noises, and or being around somebody who's in a bad mood or anything. So just consider you're providing a nice, pleasant place for something to awaken. And some of my secrets are, I use music that's tuned to 432, and I use crystals and chimes and bowls and tuning forks. And another big thing is astrological timing, and in particularly the moon cycle. You always want to do it when the moon is waxing, and preferably close to a full moon. And a full moon, runs 3 days before and 3 days after, so it's not like you have to be on an exact timeline, but doing it near the full moon really helps. And just keeping those good intentions and the good sound and the good environment, and try to avoid sunlight at all costs and EMF. And if you don't know how to charge things energetically, you can just chant things like the fruits of the spirits, like love, joy, peace, patience, temperance, all that. Just keep good thoughts in your mind and everything, and you are charging it. Make it with love. How they always say things taste better when they're made with love? Well, you definitely want to keep that in mind when you're making your Ormus. All right, well, that's going to wrap it up. I've gone further than I wanted to already, but I hope this is helpful to you. And again, if you have additional questions, feel free to zap me a comment or a question, and I'll do my best to answer them best I can. All right, this is Robert Allen. I thank you for watching. Good day. God bless, and namaste.